Yeah? I said it to you, but also everybody. All right, well, thank you again. I am going to now introduce a number of artists who are sharing their practices with us today. We have 3 different artist presentations today, so this is really exciting for us. And we ramped up our pace of artist talks from our last 2 sessions. And so it's my honor to introduce and invite artist Mariel Belanger to share with us. Mariel, when I introduced myself for the program, I mentioned how I had had many different roles at the Indigenous Art Intensive, and it occurred to me that somebody I know who's had many of these roles as well is Mariel Belanger. Also Peter, I'll say the same when I introduce Peter, but who've all taught and worked with as artists in residence and in different ways with the intensive. Mariel Belanger is a PhD student at Queen's University in Cultural Studies, researching ethnographic historical documents and recordings to map the archives for family-specific song, story, and lived experience of the Syilx people at the head of the lake. Mariel's research centers identity through the lens of Indigenous ways of knowing and being in the world, customary law, Indigenous feminism, Smimai Syilx performance theory, intersectionality, the effects of being half, and exploring how cultural identity is rebuilt through oral history and performance practice. Mariel's MFA thesis, The Earth Reclaimed Her, a continuing study of blood memory, embodied story practice, and personal governance, won her a Shirk Scholarship and was the foundation to bringing new histories to light. Mariel has traveled to Chile from Tumoku to Socorama, demonstrating a Skaluk-centric land-based visitor protocol and performing how colonial violence still affects the bodies of Indigenous women through her performance Illegal, Let Us Live, co-authored by the late Dr. Greg Younging. In 2002, Mariel won a CGS Shirk Doctoral Scholarship and the Queen's University Graduate Scholarship. Mariel's writing can be found in the chapter Skaluk Woman, She Brings Bundles in the forthcoming book Unsettling Education, Decolonizing and Indigenizing the Land. Responsibility, Weaving Words of Responsibility Through Story in the online journal Review Perses. And another chapter, Eagle Feather. I'm going to let Mariel introduce that one in Syilxchin, in New Directions for Theorizing in Qualitative Inquiry. Experiencing Resonance as a Practice of Ritual Engagement, a co-authored chapter in Research and Reconciliation and Alt Theater, Cultural Diversity, and the Stage magazine. And so please join me in welcoming Mariel, artist, guest curator, writer, scholar. Thank you, Mariel.
How do I move things? Is this one? Okay. This one? White, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. White Haskell Hall, Inchai Squeeze Anson Kantil Inkamablux Insus Ulo. Hello, good day. My name is Mariel Belanger and I'm from Head of the Lake, specifically at Dry Creek. I am currently just getting over a migraine, and so I'm a little bit like here, but not. A lot of the work that I do is just me being myself in my regular life, and then looking back and saying, oh my God, these people are studying this. For a while there, I was looking for representation of different indigenous representation in bipolar research, and there was none. So I started to talk to my psychologist about it more, and I tell him, you need to be writing this stuff down. This is your job. But my work is definitely a continuation of the work that I started in my master's, which I haven't even unpacked any of that stuff yet, because I'm bipolar and I work in cycles. So I'm coming back to it. So what is embodied story practice? Dr. Jeanette Armstrong describes Mime as being the first-person narrative of personal recollection of what's happening at the time. It's informed by Chaptik, and it's self in relation to all and everything that is around us, Skelokach. And if I was a language specialist, I would tell you what eagle feather is, but I don't know for the chapter. And it's basically things that I've been learning my whole life through performance, through family practice, through theater, through community practice, and as a parent, I've tried to continue that work. Because as we know, as Michael has mentioned, that a lot of our representation was omitted because it didn't suit the narrative at the time. I was inspired in my master's by Fred Wilson in Minding the Museum, and what he did he would pair different things in the museum, and what I tried to do was put myself in the museum as representation, because there was none. Even to this day, it's very hard, even though I'm there trying to give them my stuff. Like, here, I need some space. I know, it's a little bit backwards, but I'm trying to make space. I carry a lot of archives with me, and it's been my practice, not because I wanted it, because I have this responsibility based on what I've been raised with. And that includes our songs and dances, and it includes the stories that were captured by St. Cliff Native Theatre Company. St. Cliff Native Theatre Company ran in my community from 1986 until the mid-90s, when we had to quickly change for funding practices and became one of the first life skills youth programs, and then one of the first Indigenous media arts youth programs, and then we were just wiped out because you can't be a success forever, which is sad. But I've been able to maintain all of that through my studies as a PhD student, and the only way that I'm able to do that is by being a scholarship student. And it's interesting. It's an interesting time to be an Indigenous scholarship student right now, because they love to want you, but then they leave you adrift. How Turtle Freed the People is one of our chaptik. It's an oral story that talks about the importance of our dreams and believing in ourselves and not being a bully. And I really take that to heart in a lot of the work that I do, because the main character is Turtle, and that's the unlikely hero. And like Turtle, I have all this stuff on my back that is a part of me, and I carry it with me wherever I go. Today, what I do that is very similar to what I've always been doing is making things, presenting, telling my truth, but also trying to raise my daughter to speak in her truth and to get her to understand how this legacy is not only mine, but it's a family legacy, that our stories matter and that we are people of this land, and it is because of our ancestry that there's any history to tell. In particular, here in the Okanagan, my great-grandfather, Joseph Abel, is recorded in so many different natural foods books that we don't know anything, and it's very sad. All that knowledge was taken, and so for the last almost 10 years since I went back to school, I've been reclaiming all of that knowledge. Currently, I'm here at the university working on the archives of my own family still, and including mine that I've created for myself from my children, to tell a story. Sinchaskacha, I can't say woman yet, but I'll get it. But horsewoman, about my daughter who was born a miracle, a twin who lost her brother in utero, and how we've been drawn back to the land, and how regardless as to what is going out there, we know that we have a place to come home to, where the horses are. And where the horses are is where we belong, because we're horse people here. What I really took and grew more with from my masters was my tule mat making. I started just performing with the tule mat teepee that was made by Dr. Sean Brigham, to creating my own and to understanding a deeper connection to place. This is, well, see, I'm trying to start a business on an empty field, because that's just how it works these days. Except for it's on reserve and you can't really get any funding, because the government actually doesn't care about the last 2% except for the ones that they can actually take from us. So trying to come into society, even in 2023, as an Indigenous person on the reserve is ridiculously stupid. And I mean it like that. Because I had to go in the middle of my PhD to business school to understand the language of business entrepreneurship, so that I could speak the same language as these bankers who don't seem to understand, like, you want this. You really want this. I know it. I can see it in all the literature coming from every single one, all of everybody. There's a 94 call to action. Yours is 92. Yours is 57. You guys, these are public servants in business. That's the research I had to do to get a business plan, and now it's working out for my PhD. And I'm supposed to be differentiating between what is PhD work and what is regular life work. And I'm sorry, folks, I can't do it. And this is the curious case of misplaced academic opportunity. That's me. That's the look. Literally, I'm 7 years old, and my grandmother has just marched me and my cousin out in front of these people in a camera, and they're like, dance. Okay. And I danced, and very crappily. It was like hilarious to watch how these things that were not rehearsed, not planned, random strangers just show up at your door because your grandma's known to speak to people. Like, I don't need to research anybody else. I really don't. So I wrote this anti-essay because I stopped being a thespian in 2020. And it kind of hurt my feelings. I had a really bad experience where I was faced with the reality that I am not pretending, and that I don't script things because it's called life, and I don't do theater, and I don't do applied theater, and I should not be in theater at all, because every time I'd get into a class like performance ethnography, I would be looking at other people thinking, why are we looking at those people like that? Like, we're not supposed to be doing this anymore. Why are we still doing this? And there was a big thing that happened at my school that blew up. It blew up the whole department. And it caused me to meet with some other folks who were having a hard time trying to decolonize their practice in the theater. And Philip Geller was one of them, because he was at the center of this explosion that happened at their school. And since then, we've been meeting online at first, just talking about what our experiences were as students in this theater program across the country, and how theater is like literally the soapbox for colonization. You know, it's like it was made to tell stories of colonizers. And even in the black box space, that space is a completely colonized space of erasure. You know, like you erase everything that's around you and to try to incorporate something new. So it opened up my eyes to a lot of things that were wrong at the university level. And it wasn't just in the theater program where I was at, it was across research. And so this, as like, if you want to go and read it, it's not that long. It's kind of fun. It's really fun, actually. But my intention was that it was going to be stream of consciousness, and that people were going to be like, whoa, this is the end? No, actually I have to go back and tab back and, you know, like make all this effort to read my thoughts, because it takes a long time for them to come out sometimes, in a way that people understand, because I talk in array, I guess. And it was cool when I was doing it for class, and everybody liked it. I got a good mark. But then I wanted to get it published, and then they colonized my paper. And it was online, and I was like, I hate that. I hate when I have to format anything. I hate formatting, standardizing. I hate it. This is a video. It was the final project for our performance ethnography class, and it was about a paper that we had to read from one of Victor Turner's students, William, I can't remember what his name is, it was insignificant to me. But they were studying the quiet, I say it better when I say quiet. It just doesn't want to come up. A cannibal song, or cannibal dance. And so in response, I created this, because we were all in isolation. This was at the height of the pandemic, and Toronto was shut down, so you couldn't go anywhere except for project on the wall in your studio apartment, which is cool. And I created this little vignette and dance that I called Eat the Rich. And it's funny. This little scene is funny, so I encourage you to read it. And the bonus part to publishing was that they asked me to put some of the language in to speak to the project, and like I have none. But my daughter has been working with a Matthias dictionary on Okanagan language, Tony Matthias, and he captures phrases, different phrases, and so I pulled these phrases out, and she helped to make sure that it was in the right linguistic style, because that's what she's learning now. And she wouldn't be learning that stuff if she didn't have the opportunity to, which none of our young people have really until this last couple years. But it's through our practice of sharing with each other, my daughter and I, that I found more enjoyment just sitting with her, watching her play her dumb games and talking about the landscape in the game. That really triggered where am I going now in my PhD. And embodied story practice, digital, is about the places that we go online where we still talk about the land like it's there in front of us. And last year, was it last year? No, 2 years ago now, when we had the big fire, like it came down into our community and burned our community for the first time in 150 years. Lots of devastation, a lot of vegetation that was lost that we had just spent 5 years planting, trying to regenerate the landscape that I grew up on as responsibility to place and self in relation to place. This is a place on Abtec Island that was created by Scabanati and Jason Lewis, I think in 2012. And it's one of the very first indigenized spaces in the internet on Second Life where they created whole films. They're called machinimas when they're in game. And I was really inspired by this place, just sitting inside the longhouse as Wailuch, as my counterpart, Foxwoman. And what I'm working on here is, you know, where do we go next? Where are we as Chaptik, contemporary Chaptik, the ones who are here now, animal people? How do we represent? And where do we go to represent? And if we don't have capacity to be on the line, on the land, can we bring the land to those who need it? And so I want to be retracing like some of the stories that my family have told about this specific place at Dry Creek in Siskoolaut, where I can trace it by footprint myself on the land, and then in digital footprint make those same amount of steps into this place where they'll be able to turn and see the things that I see physically on the land. At least for a little while. It's like, you know, doing anything on the internet is kind of like you put it out there and then it kind of disappears after a while because technology changes or you get focused on something else. And so while I would love for it to be part of curriculum building, I kind of just see that I'm leaving a lot of seeds. I'm trying to build a garden that other people will come and sow and plant. How does land carry messages and story for the people to be, and how do we help maintain these stories in a contemporary context? That's my new PhD question. What teachings do people need in order to retain cultural integrity in their colonized lives? So when I was 16, St. Club Native Theatre Company saved me in multiple ways. It gave me a grounding and a base as to knowing who I was as a Syilx person, when people would rather see me as Pocahontas. And harvesting tule reeds at O'Keefe Ranch taught me about who I was on the land before O'Keefe Ranch came around, and what our responsibility to place is physically when it comes to the marshlands, because all of our kitchenware and our home ec and that sort of technology was maintained there. And when we were taken from the land and taken from the waterways and taken from the marsh, all of that materiality laid to waste. And in its waste, it became toxic. And in its toxicity, you know, it gets a little bit smelly. But that's because we're not allowed to be there anymore. In the majority of places where the reeds are, it's sanctioned as bird sanctuary. And people are just not allowed to go in those places. And so, you know, there's a lot of ecological damage that's being done just by our reduced capacity to be in these places. So as I continue with the digital practice, I always maintain my physical practice and bring my family as much as I can. Oh, and it looks like I'm done.
Yes.
I'm going to talk some more in the studio. You guys want to come and visit?
Yes, we do want to visit.
I'll show you some of my videos up there because I'm in a real cool media space. All right, thank you so much.